Hey everyone, it's 1 week till the next SRO Esports race, so I took some time to do a couple more coaching lessons, and I'll just take you on board for one, because well, the guy I'm coaching has a little trouble with Discord, where I usually do the live streaming, because it offers full HD, 30 frames, 60 frames if I need to. So what I usually do is just open Motec, open the game, run him through his lab, check all the details, switch back and forth between the two programs, and well, basically talk him through. So he just sits there, watches, listens, asks questions. Well, we'll emit the questions for this video. First thing, what I usually do is I'll go to the game and go through the desired lab. We're looking at a 220.3 something. We are basically on the aggressive preset, just tiny changes to make him more comfortable. Then just hot lap mode with a clear preset. I think time of day looks a bit morning-ish here, and that's really about it. So we're having controlled conditions. I then took the same or similar setup, which is pretty much the same as the aggressive preset, to the track as well. Did a reference lab, and we'll review his data to mine in Motec as we go along. So first thing I always do is I look for, I don't know, the bigger hiccups that you can have. So I run through the lab in full speed. Just see if the line placement is alright, braking point is okay. There's a lot of turning happening. Not all the track used in this occasion. Then we skip forth a bit. Let's see how Eau Rouge goes. Definitely a lift there, so there's more space to take. Upshift seems a little early. Let's go to the braking zone here. Using the curb, that looks good. Running a bit wide, taking time to line up to the right. Long, well, not long time of coasting, but some at least. Let's check this one. Okay, some trailing happening, speed correction, waiting for the second apex, then putting the power down. All right. Yeah, that was a bit harsh on turn in, bit late. Speed not properly lined. Upshift again a bit early, seems to be a pattern. Okay, a bit hesitation on turn in. Overall exit here looks fine. Lining up, okay, so line overall is not a problem, but adjusting the speed and judging what the car is doing and asking. Some hesitation here on throttle, going onto the AstroTurf, kicking the rear out a bit. Yeah, going a bit loose there. That probably costs a lot of time onto the back straight, just because every kilometer you can take out of this short second gear right corner onto here will matter up until the chicane. Again, early upshifts. That's going to cost you in a McLaren. Flat out through there, fine. Braking point seems alright, drifting towards the outside, turning in, using the curb. That's a bit, yeah, not ideal, let's say it this way. Okay. And we're looking at 220.37, I believe. Let's roll it back and actually go corner by corner, and for this, take it over to Motec, really, which you should be seeing now on the screen. And I moved the camera, so I'm not covering all the data. So what you see on the left, his lab is already marked white, so all the data you'll see is all white data is his, and all colored data is mine from the 217.005 that I could manage in the short amount of time. So first thing, let us zoom in a bit, because I don't know, if you zoom out, everything looks fairly similar, but the closer you go in, the more visible the details become. And as you see, there is quite some difference to see already right now. Let's start with the braking point, for example. He's braking about 258 meters into the lap, and for me it's about, well, let's say 8 meters later, the braking point. And we'll be seeing this throughout the whole braking zone. right? With the speed up here, with his speed in white, and we have the delta between us up here, which means, okay, throughout the whole braking zone, which covers, let's say, how many seconds are we braking? From 5 to, well, it's about 2.5, 3 seconds braking zone. For the whole time, I will be traveling 10 kilometers faster just by being a little later on the brake. You can see that he's too early on the brake. That's why he's releasing the brake here a bit to adjust the speed and delay the slowdown a bit to actually find the turning point. And then you can see as he starts to release the brake, he's making this trail brake attempt, which I like a lot. It's always something I advise to do to keep the load on the front tire. And so let's say the pattern is similar, it's just on another level. So while he gets a lot of braking done early, then stops braking for a little in between, and then all the braking he has done additionally at the beginning, he can't do here because he would be parking the car essentially at the apex if he wasn't to slow down the car a little less. What else can we see? The slowest point in the corner, that will be pretty much matched, at least on track. And what else we can see is the form or the kind of how he goes into the throttle. So what he does is goes into this 60, 70, well 67 to be precise level. You can see that here, by the way. 67% of throttle, keeps it there a bit, and then increases to the 100% level at the exit of the corner. Whereas my throttle application is always a lot harsher. I see this pretty much with everyone I coach, that my throttle application is a lot harder, which usually brings me time onto the straight. In this very example, there isn't much gained on my end on the straight, so that's pretty cool. Even gained something back. Could be conditions, not too sure about that. There's always tiny variances. But the other things I spotted, and that was already in the replay, that he has quite a high turning angle early on in the corner, and that we can see here. He's going up to, well, what's that, 100 and, oh, we wanted to review that lap. There you go. So braking pattern similar, yes, but the main thing is the turning angle I wanted to point out. And that's the 206 degrees he has for quite some time in the corner, and that will lead to a lot of understeer in the car. So let's say I think the maximum you will need in this corner, let's just assume I make that perfect, and maybe there's some more. Let's say 180 degree is what the tires can take in that corner, but he's just asking a lot more of the front tire by rotating the wheel too. Well, pretty much, I guess that this is where his arms meet, so he can turn more. And that's definitely too much, and asking too much of the front tires, and will just take forever. The car will take forever to rotate. We might be even able to see this here. It's not too pointed. Let's omit that graph for a second. Let's stick it with this. Which, so first advice definitely is you're turning too much. That's what I'm going to say. And you have to align the amount of turning with the amount of braking you do, which he does fine here. So as he goes out of the brake, he starts to turn more, and as he's out of the brake, he reaches the maximum turning angle, which is the correct way to do to get all the, like, think of the tire as, well, the contact patch, let's say, can take 100% of grip, and you can either use that for decelerating, or you can use it for turning. On the front tire, that is. So, and if you ask 100% of decelerating, so 100% of braking from the front tire, you just can't turn. It will understeer, no matter what you do. So when you want to start to turn and allow the tire to really build the grip and convert it into turning, then you have to take something away from the decelerating forces. Else, you're gonna just create some more slip on the tire, and you just go understeer away. So he does that correctly by going out of the brake and turning more. So there's some alignment between the two inputs happening. You can see this similarly with the colored line for me. So I go out of the brake, start to turn here. Then I keep the brake level and I keep the turning level, because, I mean, that's all intuitively, right? It's not like I go to the corner and, oh no, I have to do this now. It's just how I happen to drive. And then as I go out of the brake completely, you can see the turning angle increases even more, and that's for me only late in the corner, whereas for him it's already like through the whole of the corner. He's just scraping a lot of speed away from the car, and he'll be, what's that, 13, 14 kilometers down middle of the corner. So that's a lot of speed he has to rebuild going for the exit of the corner. And if you spotted it, his line through the corner is very late entry, a lot of turning now, so the car, like from here, the car just can't take it anymore. It's just unsteering away, has a very late apex in the corner. If we view that from above, let's do that for a second. Maybe roll it back just a second if we can. Look where his apex, so pretty much there is the closest point for him to the inside of the corner, whereas for me the apex is probably somewhere around here or so. So he has a very late apex. He focuses a lot on the straight, and this is also why he gained some of the time back, but he definitely lost time on the whole entry, braking zone, understeering through here. And overall, let's fly out a bit more. I'll overdo it a bit, but his line is like going straight until here, then kind of get the car rotated into here, and then have the apex there accelerate away like this. Whereas for me, the line will probably look a bit more around like this. It's a classic probably. So, and then where is the time lost? It's pretty much here in the braking zones where the time goes away. In the middle of the corner, I'm about 3.5 tenths up already, and then he just gained something back on the better exit. But viewing the corner as a whole, and up until Eau Rouge, he has, well, lost 1 out of the 30 tenths we're trying to find throughout the lap. So let's move on a bit. And you've already seen that he was lifting in Eau Rouge, turning angle wise. Actually, I need to switch back to Motec, of course, else you can't see what I'm doing. So what I was saying was he gained, I'll lose something in the braking, he loses in the braking zone, mid corner, 3.5 tenths ahead for me, gains something back on the straight, but never really gets everything back that he lost initially. So that's the first tenth, doesn't sound much, and we can see that throughout the lap there is more time lost elsewhere. So let's focus on where more time is lost. We can see onto, or let's say through Eau Rouge and onto the Camel Straight. We're at the end of Camel Straight looking at half a second already, so there's, I mean, it's fairly easy to see, right? The lift here, that's where his speed all of a sudden decreases a lot compared to me, and then all along the straight, that's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8 kilometers that he's going to be slow, and of course that costs you a lot of time. So that's an easy thing, but let's find out why he does not like that corner so much. So let's see what he's doing again. Going in over the left curb as much as he can, which is perfectly fine to line up for the right turn. And then I think we might have to switch to the cockpit to see the amount of turning. So he's turning in, and I think the lift right now is actually creating the problem. Because as he goes back into the throttle, it's already so much speed decreased that he easily makes a turn, goes over that curb here, and done right, you would pretty much want the, let's do a little slower, you want the right side tires to barely be inside the track limits here. So your right side tires should be where his left side tires are right now. And if you aim for that, it should be, I mean, it's hard to give that advice, but you really have to take a Rouge flat out, else you just don't stand a chance of doing a great lap time, because you easily lose half a second onto the Camel Straight already. Always going the wrong direction with these cameras. So the advice here really is, and let's go back to Motec for that, this lift is going to cost so much that I think that in terms of practice, you have to force yourself to take a Rouge flat out each and every time. This must be your target. And even though there's I mean, turning wise, it doesn't look too different what he does. It just, I think it might be a bit too smooth coming from the left over to the right. You want to definitely, you have to force the car a little in there, and you have to throw it a tiny bit to get it near the inside curb. And I think even the aggressive preset allows you to use the curb on the inside without unsettling the car too much. Important bit, stay flat out through there. That's really important for a good lap time in the end. And it's really, I mean, that's what we can do in the sim. We can reverse engineer the corner. We can go flat out, die, go flat out again until it works. And of course, he's more having the real life approach and rather surviving the corner than making it perfect. But I think in most cars I've driven in the game, Eau Rouge can be taken flat. So this is something that has to be worked on here. Let's move on to the next corner. Let's do so in the sim as well. Let's move forward to the braking zone. Let's go to the chase cam once more, because I think sometimes you just see it a little better there. If we roll it forward now, you can see he's braking the straight line. He's using all the track available, but you really have to consider the curb track as well. So there's another 30 centimeters, 50 to the left or so, that are track, and you can use to slow down the car, and you will see that in my lap later on. That I'll brake on the curb, use a couple of centimeters extra to turn in the car, and then just keep a higher speed through the corner. He's trailing the brake nicely. Not sure you can see with the overlay right there. Let's wait for it to disappear. So there's some trail braking happening until quite late in the corner, which is what I usually advise. And then going over the curb, rolling a bit there. I think I like that corner overall. Let's speed it up a bit, using curb there, a bit hesitant on throttle here. That takes a bit too long to be on throttle. The car is far away from the curb already. That was a bit just hesitant, not asking too much of the car there. Swing it over, hesitant out of throttle, upshift, rolling for quite a bit. And that will, even though it looks fine, the line is right, there's just not enough speed carried onto the straight. And if we just take the last curb where it ends as a reference, 178, I think there will be like 5, 6, 7 kilometers more on my car. So let's take that back to Motec and through the whole section. And you really have to, these connected corners, you have to see them as a section, and they're really dependent on one another. Say if you do the first corner a little faster, you will very likely do the second slower, the third slower, because they're all connected. So let's zoom in a bit. Again, we can see the braking point. He's a bit earlier, starting to, let's say, take this, 2,269 meters, and for me it's about 8-9 meters later. And that probably comes from just him not taking that wide entry, using that tiny bit of extra space on the left, using the curb. Because then you have a wider entry into the corner. You can carry more speed onto the curb. And that's where it all starts, really. So then he's slowing down the car, and the difference in this braking zone is even bigger than the one before. We're looking at almost 20 kilometers in the braking zone already. So this is where the time really starts to fade away from him. And if we go a little further to just have that center screen, you can see just the whole braking zones just moved a tiny bit to the right for me. But the overall point where we go out of the brake, that's the same again. And then we just roll into the corner that is similar onto the curb. Yet he'll always lag like those 4, 5, 6 kilometers throughout the whole corner. And let me tell you something extra there. So going over this curb, usually once the front tires hit the curb, that will create some element of rotation in the car. So that usually makes people inconfident because the rear steps out, so they go a bit slower and are careful with the steering. Did I switch to the game? There you go, here's the curb. So on this curb, as you hit it, the front kind of gets moved about, and the rear usually unsettles. And then people become confident, and they start opening the turning. They carry a little less speed because they get confused from what the curb is telling you through the wheel. And if we go, let's go to Motec once more. If we look at the mid-corner speed, I'm always 5 kilometers faster. And what this does is, going back to the game, it will create actually understeer going over the curb. So you, how do I explain this? You really have to be a little too fast than what you expect the corner, expect the speed to be in that corner. And if you just go 1, 2, 3 kilometers too fast, you can make use of this moment of rotation that you get as you hit the curb, and then the car will rotate around the corner a lot better while not kicking out the rear. Um, it's it's a narrow margin right there, but the advice is, which sounds dumb, you have to go faster a little. And what you can also see is, if you look at the turning angles, this time I do have more than he does. So I'm asking a little too much of the front tire to create this tiny bit of understeer to settle the rear end of the car, because that's one of the weak points of all the mid-engine cars, and especially the McLaren. The rear never really wants to quite follow the front. So you create, or at least I do, create this tiny bit of understeer by turning a tiny bit too much of the curb, carrying a tiny bit too much speed, and then the rear becomes controllable, turns a bit less, and doesn't surprise you so much going into the corners. Then what I like, the way he picks up the throttle between the two corners, perfectly fine. Through the left corner, he kind of matches my speed by now. Goes off the throttle, rolls a bit, turning angle seems pretty much on point. You can just see, for me, there's a lot of correction stuff going on. So I'm just a bit more on the verge of losing the rear there, dancing with a bit with it, which is just a confidence thing. You can't have that unless you do loads of laps and you bring yourself to that limit more and more. But I think through the left-hander again, then I think something to spot will be the way I go out of the throttle here. It's just a tiny difference, but just makes the transition of the car, the load transfer in the car, a little less severe. And for him, there's probably just going out of the throttle. It will create a lot of grip on the front tire. The car will rotate a lot, and that will again make him insecure. So he's not carrying all the speed into the corner that he could, because he's expecting the rear to step out, which is probably why he slows it down a bit through there. You even see me doing a little correction there, adjusting the speed position of the car, not ideal. Then rolling through there, and then throttle application after the left-hander. Let's switch it back to the game, roll there a bit. So this is fine, throttle down, and now out of the throttle, over the curb, and now he's just waiting quite a lot, and then is quite easy into the throttle because he fears the rear a bit. But what you really want is slam the throttle for, or at least go more aggressive into the throttle to get the rear rotated around, and then be able to line the car up better here on the left hand side to get a good exit onto the next short straight. And this is probably where he will lose all his time. Let's spin it a little further. So he's not getting it across to the left too much. There's probably a meter to the left missing or so. And then rolls into this one, half throttle something. Let's review that in the data, because that's probably more telling. So as I said, more throttle application out of the left-hander there for me, kicking the rear out a bit, controlling it by adjusting the throttle position, then back full throttle, aligning the car on the left-hand side, and then, I mean, the whole transition, left-right, that's pretty much matched between us, but at the same time, I will be using more track in all of the cases. Then there's one thing I really want to point out into this corner, which is, I think, really important. So while he kind of hesitates with going out of the throttle, because if you do that in second gear there, as he does here, you can see he's in second gear, going out of the throttle. There's a lot of engine brake going on. The weight of the car moves forward quite quickly. You get a lot of load on the front tires, and the car will turn in quite drastically. So by now, he would probably end up on the inside grass, just because of the way he forces the car to show reaction going into the corner. And if I show you in the Motec data, down here you can see the gears used. and I really time the upshift with the exact amount, with the exact time when I go out of the throttle. And this will do the following. You go out of the throttle, you shift up at the same amount of time, same point of time, and you will be in a higher gear, lower revs, less engine brake, and therefore you get a less harsh reaction from the car on turn in. And that gives me a lot of more confidence going into the right-hander because my rear will be way more settled. So it's again, like in the corners before, the rear in the McLaren is really sensitive, doesn't want to follow the front. So I'm essentially taking a bit of reaction away from the front and make it less less reactive to my input and therefore settling the rear through that corner. And then you can see I'm carrying about the whole section really. I'm carrying 5, 6, 7 kilometers through the corner, and then being inside the corner, let's check for him again. So he's doing this upshift thing as well, but it's just a tiny bit late. He was already out of the throttle in second gear, forcing the reaction of the car, and then he does the shift up. So we really have to time the two, and then it works a lot better. Then he's rolling a bit, waiting for that inside curb to appear, and then he's going into the throttle again. The whole throttle application process is a little hesitant down here. And you really have to get the rotation out of the car, you have to floor the throttle. Which kind of is, I mean, that works in conjunction, right? So I carry more speed, so I'll naturally run wider. And because I would do so, I have to apply more throttle to get the rear rotated and make the corner. Whereas for him, being slower, he doesn't have to force the rear as much. So overall, there's just a confidence thing going on through the whole thing, through the whole section. And overall, harsher into the throttle, harsher out of the throttle, timing the reaction of the car with the upshift to kind of mitigate the harsh reaction of the car. And then you can carry a little more speed into it and to not understeer through the corner, hit the throttle hard. You can see I have to make a correction here as well, which is not ideal. Might be down to the setup, might be down to lack of practice in this scenario. Yet overall you will see that the time I gain is, well, pretty much, let's say what's on the braking zone. Here we're looking at 4.7 tenths through the corners up until this acceleration you're into the straight. Another 3.5 tenths are lost, and then just that straight from 9.2 tenths we're going up to 1.1. So another 2 tenths just lost on the straight for this late and hesitant throttle application and not carrying enough speed through the corner. I think that one is very pronounced in this one. And yeah, choosing a different gear at a different time, aligning it with going out of the throttle, using more track available, working a bit with the car more, forcing it a bit more. Let's check for the next braking zone, and I already said that when we were looking at the lap, and let's actually do that again. That's a bit too far. He's already turning in quite early, which isn't necessarily wrong. In this corner you want this double apex approach kind of. So he's hitting the first one. He's on the brake still, trialing deeper, running away from the curb again, which is fine. And by now he's out of the brake, just waiting for the car to rotate and going into the throttle again a bit. And I think this is where one of the problems comes from. This, I don't know, 40-50% throttle thing, this will usually cause trouble because it stops the car from rotating and using the engine brake, but it also at the same time you don't really accelerate using 40-50% throttle. You're just staying at a steady speed all the time, and then he's already on the inside, which is probably a bit early, so he has to wait for quite some time until he can really put the power down. Going back to Motec, we should see this similarly. Braking wise, braking point is way more similar. You can see he probably has like Trustmaster or Logitech pedals, not too sure. But usually for me it's a problem since my brake pedal is so hard. I'm using 65 kilos, just takes me longer to reach 100%, but it's marginal. And then going out of the brake, he's again doing the trail braking, which is nice. I have my different way there. That's not the main issue, I would say. The trouble comes from, again, he kind of overslows the car, and he will be inside the corner way too early. So if we, hard to match, hard to find that point in time. He's just making the corner tighter than he has to, right? If you look where the black line is that ACC shows us, he's probably going to be or needs to be a car width further to the left here or so still, and making that first apex just that probably a bit later. I mean, he's on the inside right here, there, and you probably want that first apex in this corner to be, let's say, where the green patch is on the right. So we want to delay the entry a bit, keep the speed up for longer a bit, and I'll just show you a graphic in a second. Oh, sorry guys, I forgot to switch. Come on. Switch over to ACC. So he's on the inside here already, but you want to be on the inside here. That's your first apex, so to say. And from here you can run it wide a bit, then rotate the car and have that second apex over there a bit. Going back to Motec, therefore, he'll have this coasting here mid-corner, and there the speeds match again. I just take a lot longer to reach the same speed that we need to make the turn. And then, since he's already on the inside, and if he would be coasting, he'd be running onto the inside grass. So you has to pick the speed up a little just to stay on the track, really. Whereas for me, I just come from a wider outside line, and let me actually just show that again in the game. Probably what we'll be seeing. Now the camera moves with us, sadly. That's going to be annoying. So he's very much to the inside again, like halfway through the corner aisle, just about halfway through. So this is probably, you want to be inside here, roll a bit to the outside here, then rotate the car around here, and then have a more straight exit onto, onto the straight. So you want to, what they call it is, you want to V the corner a bit, and I might just overpronounce, right? You paint this V into the corner here somewhat, and then of course make it less severe and take your point here somewhat. But be careful, not go too far outside of the track, because there's going to be the marbles, and they will not help you rotate the car. Back to Motec then. Again, what we can also see is his turning angle is quite a lot more than I have, so he's probably forcing a lot of understeer out of the car. It's not going to help rotating the car, so he will necessarily take longer for the car to rotate around that corner. And then on the exit, just takes him quite a while to put that power down, just because the second apex needs to be a lot later in this corner. So in this one, he's losing time on entry, definitely here in the braking zone, couple of kilometers. I mean, in the braking zones again, 15, 16 kilometers. Then middle of the corner, we match. He's faster even a bit there for some time. And then as I rotate my car, I put the power down, I accelerate onto that straight, and it's again 5 kilometers advantage onto that straight. Even though I have to do these corrections, I'm still gaining time there a bit. And what I want to do is I prepared a couple track maps for that purpose, and let's look at speed in that corner, and now I really just have to adjust that graph. Having 98 is minimum there, so let's do something like 80, and let's do the maximum to 110 or so. And this should now point out pretty much where the slow speed in the corners are. Actually, let's make it a little more pronounced even. Let's do 85 and do 105. So okay, now I think we can see it better. This the highest zoom I can get out of Motec, so sorry for that. Let me make sure you can see it. You can. So what you see, the red dot is me, and the white dot is him. So first of all, you can see I carry that speed into the corner for longer, right? So there's a fair difference of where my yellow speed, so to say, is, which is in the 100-kilometer range. Then it's the green being the 90s, and then going blue That is 85 something or so. So what you can see is my slow point in the corner is quite early on, and from there it's really back into throttle, whereas for him, the slow point is similar, but then it's not as pronounced as it is for me, and he's slow already earlier. So it just takes him a longer amount of time to get the speed down, and also the amount of slow speed he's traveling through the corner is probably longer. A different way to look at it is zooming in on the pedal application, and you can see here that for him the braking and the throttle blips happening there. I just travel the brake a little deeper into the corner and then just coast a bit. Tiny correction there on throttle, also not ideal, but then the throttle application is just a lot harsher than what he does. So while he's just, I don't know, playing with the throttle in the low area around here, for me it's just I'm asking a harsh reaction from the car, kicking the rear out a bit, asking all the rotation from the rear end of the car. Then the rear comes, I have to go out of the throttle here again, wait for it to settle back into the throttle. Again, it steps out on me, I have to correct a bit, right? This is all the work that's happening there. You could say for him it's cleaner, but in the end it's costing him time, especially here, because he doesn't get the rotation done with the car and doesn't get the speed onto that straight. So looking at that corner as a whole, he's entering 1.1 seconds down. End of next straight, we're looking at 1.3.5. So there's 2.5 tenths lost in that section, which doesn't sound much, but if you add it up throughout the whole lap, tenth to here and there, that will cost you along the way. Let's look at the next one, and again, let's start with watching the game actually, maybe in the proper camera. So what's good, he's bringing the car over to the right, and he is also straightening the car before he's going into the brake, which is fine. Then braking, and then he just doesn't really want to turn in, it seems. And as he does, going out of the brake, there's a harsh reaction from the car, creating oversteer. He goes into the throttle to ask for the traction control to kick in and help him. And this is where the car becomes settled again, but he's losing a lot of speed, and then barely makes the corner there, and he's going to lose a lot of speed onto that straight, and we can right away see the speed gap on the exit here, which is again 15, 16 kilometers somewhat. So let's see what the differences in driving input here are. Braking point, fairly similar, going out of the throttle fairly similar as well. Just there for me the braking overall is a lot less, so I'm not decreasing as much speed as he does. So he's braking a lot longer, and that also is the problem I mentioned earlier, is that he's asking too much of the tire, so it's understeering into that corner. And as he goes out of the brake, all of a sudden the car starts oversteering, and he has to open the turning. You can see it here, right? He's opening the turning because the car oversteers. The problem is, like up until this point, he's asking a little too much of the front tire. It's understeering. And then as he goes out of the brake, all of a sudden the tire is like, oh, yeah, now I can work and I can make the car turn. But as he's in such a high turning angle, the car reacts very suddenly. The front goes to the left and the rear can't follow. This is why he has the oversteer here. So it's a bit too much braking really. And then it's the timing where he goes out of the brake and that he asked too much of the front tire before, and going out of the brake, all of a sudden the front will grip, but the rear can't take this sudden change of state in the car, and hence he will have the oversteer going into the throttle to ask for the traction control that we can see down there. All the white line here, a long slide, long application of the traction control. And this is where my car accelerates and his just stays flat, basically in terms of speed, and this is where the speed gap comes from. So in this corner really, you have to slow the car down a bit. So just brake it a tiny bit, stop, turn in, look what the car is doing, let it rotate on its own a bit. Don't unsettle it too much. Don't force it in there. No name corner hates that. And then just roll a bit, wait for the point where you can put the power down. But what's done right is that he lined up the car with the curb, straightened it before he was braking, because that's usually something people struggle with. So this one was perfectly fine. It's just, yeah, he's overslowing the car. And while braking so harsh and turning so much, the car doesn't want to turn. And then as he stops braking, it turns a lot and loses the rear. And yeah, then all the throttle application doesn't really matter because the traction control kicks in here right away from this point on for, I don't know, probably a full second, second and a half traction control working against him. And he can carry that speed into the straight. So where the time is lost here is really not in the corners, so to say. I mean, he's overslowing it, and then but everything is lost on the straight ahead. And that's a pretty big chunk of time that he's losing there. So if we look at the start of the braking zone here, 1.355 seconds. Start of the next braking zone, 1.9. So there's half a second and a bit that he's losing onto this straight, basically. Then there seem to be big differences into Pujon. Let's watch it once more. Go back to the game, skip forward. Okay, now he's braking. There's again curb on the right. Use that for braking as well. Just opens up the corner a tiny bit more. Speed-wise looks alright. It's just everything is a bit early. So he's coasting quite a long amount of time now, waiting for the car to slow down the additional speed head he still has. Going into the throttle looks fine to me. Running a bit wide here. And now asking a lot of turning from the car. And yeah, you really can use everything until the track limit every time. Go until the track limit. There's half a meter to a meter more to the right easily. And if you use that, you can turn a little less before, and that will help the car maintain that speed or build the speed in this scenario. And let's roll it back once more to the entry of this one. So you want to be on the curb when braking. Gives you a little extra turn in. And then let's actually switch back to Motec to see where the differences in input are. So my braking point a lot later. We're looking at, what's that, 703, 722. So it's about 19 meters that I brake later, and that of course will build a speed gap initially in the braking zone, where time between us starts to grow. Then I trail the brake a little deeper into the corner. Also have quite amount of coasting going on in this one, pretty much similar to what he does. Just the overall timing in the corner is different. So while he's having the car on the apex a little early, my apex just a tiny bit later. I just wait for the car for a later point in time to get the rotation done. So whereas for him, let's go back to the game, roll it forward. He's going into the corner now, and now here is his closest point. And if we just move it above, or here a bit, let's see it from above. My apex will be, somewhat here. This will be my closest point in the corner, and his closest point is more like a closest, straight in the corner, really. So that, like, his apex is way longer than mine is, and I try to bring the car to the inside a tiny bit later. And another difference we'll probably be seeing is that I tend to use third gear here because it creates extra reaction from the differential, extra slowdown in the corner, and then it also creates a harsher reaction of the rear as you put the power down. So you can get the rear rotated just a tiny bit more exiting the corner. And you can see that, let's roll it forward in the normal camera again. He's running wide here a lot. And since my apex is a tiny bit later, I won't run as wide here. I will always be like half a car width to a whole car width more to the left here, definitely. And then this next corner will be way easier to take for me. And so he's very far on the outside here, barely makes it. And once he notices that he makes it, he's already asked so much of the car that he also doesn't use the outside there. That's probably where some time will be lost onto that straight. Yet, Looking at the whole thing, 1.9 seconds here, then at the apex 2.0 something, so there's a tenth and a bit lost, and then onto that straight, just because he turns so much here, you can see it in the turning angle also here in the data. He's turning 85 something degree where I just need 50 to rotate the car, which is coming from the lower gear, the later apex, a different timing through the whole section. Just delaying that apex a bit in the first one, and then you can put the power down way more harshly and carry more speed onto the straight. So this is where he's losing almost another tenth. So it's a tenth into the corner. Mid corner he's fine, but then the later apex I have with more aggressive power, you can see here where he has to back out of the throttle. This is where I start to build a speed gap onto the straight, gain another tenth. Let's go to the next corner. He's bringing the car across to the left there. Your braking point pretty much will be where the curb starts, tiny bit earlier. He does that. Trailing the brake into this one. Looks fine. Oh yeah, I guess a little more oversteer here than he would have asked for. So that's probably, again, a combination of turning angle and braking input. Then up in third gear, halfway throttle 75% just to stabilize the car. Not really opening up the left-hander here. Being pushed wide by the curb a little. Going to the throttle, not making the corner, has to back out again. Wait till the car rotates. And then has a lot of turning going onto the AstroTurf, and that usually, does kick the rear out. So there's definitely some to learn. We really have to review the whole section, which eventually just ends with the next braking zone. So there is a sacrifice to make in this corner as well. And what I mean by that is, let's look at how he approaches this one. First of all, he's braking a little earlier than I do. Again, talking those 8 to 10 meters. So he carry more speed into the corner. Then, there's quite some difference in the braking trail, right? So for me, it is form of trail braking, but then a lot of speed, I just work away, coasting the car onto a late apex in the corner. Whereas for him, he's going out of the bike quite harshly, and again, since he's turning quite a bit already, and then just taking all the load from the front tires, and he has probably been asking too much of the front tires again. All of a sudden they grip and the rear steps out. That's really just a way of aligning the turning with the amount of braking, and as you turn more, you have to brake less and just load the tire or help the tire transition from braking to turning. So what he's doing here is just making that a little too aggressive. So he's going and turning, he's still braking, then releasing the brake. Suddenly the front tires grip, the rear steps out. He has to correct the oversteer over here, goes into the throttle again to activate the traction control. That helps the car stabilize a bit, but his line is sacrificed, his apex is sacrificed, the whole corner is kind of off. He's running wide and can't really line up for the left-hander in this S section here. So looking at the second corner really isn't worth it, because the first one kind of causes everything. But ideally, again, going into this left-hander, let's switch back to the game, 5 seconds. Going into this one, and we need another second from there. Move forward. So what you want to have is, just line up half a meter to a meter more to the right there, then go into the left. And for me, I'm using second gear up until this point. And then similarly to Les Combes on top of the hill, what I will do is, as I turn in, I go out of the throttle and shift up to third, which does a similar thing as in the earlier chicane that we had, where I will ask a reaction from the car, but not as severe as he would in second gear. And so third gear here is fine, but it just seems I think second gear goes up to 156 or something. So third gear here will just deliver a lot less power than the car has available, and you're giving away time because you're not building the speed. Then going into the left-hander with a sacrifice line, of course, is not going to work. And also the turn-in seems quite early. You definitely want to be, if you go onto the curb, go onto it completely, and you want to touch the curb pretty much over this, I don't know, is it cobblestone, something like this, and then also be on the curb for quite long and late here, where the track is actually, or where the ideal line really indicates, go over here to rotate the car. Whereas for him, yeah, if you only go onto, let's go closer there a bit. If you really only go on this angled part of the curb, it's just going to push you wide all the time and doesn't help you rotate the curb but understeer it away. So there's some time to gain by using more curb there. But yeah, as I said, the line was sacrificed already from the corner before because of the, well, not optimal alignment between braking amount and turning amount, forcing the car into that harsh oversteer moment that he had there. Going back to Motec, we will see that he's losing some time on braking, yes, but he's gaining something back in the middle section between the two corners there, because I again make a different sacrifice. I stay more on the inside in the right-hander to have a better entry into the left-hander. So I gave some speed there away, then have that better exit into the left-hander, but the way earlier throttle application, and then onto the straight is where I will gain the time. So start of this section, 2.1 seconds, then slowing it down to the corner, delay the apex a bit for a later apex in the corner. The left-hander, again, have a wider entry, sacrifice some mid-turn speed for that early throttle application, very exit-focused driving, and then onto the straight, I will gain another 1.5 tenths. So overall, 2.5 tenths in this section. Of course, he made an error there. If you wouldn't, looks different, but again, it's about making the right compromise in this section, and for me it is focusing on the short straight out of the left-hander, which will gain you more time than being fast in the middle of the corner. Going back to the game and this next braking zone, and what I definitely spotted there is, again, this curb, I tried using it. It's not advised because it's rather short, and it drives away attention from entering the corner. It's more a thing about that than it is about using the track there. He's turning in, fully braking, going out of the brake, turning in now, going onto the curb. Yeah, now he gets a lot of excessive rotation, goes into the throttle to prevent the car from, well, going onto the grass on the inside basically. Going on throttle to pretty much, yeah, he's asking for the traction control to come help him. Then puts the power down, but he probably lost a lot of speed, forcing the car into this corner there. And let's look at it in terms of input. Zooming in, there is, so braking a little early again, seems to be a pattern. He's always braking a little earlier, then he goes out of the brake, has that trailing, which is nice, but always the problem with the turning here. So he's already at his maximum turning angle, still braking, and now as he releases the brake, he will have the reaction of the car, and you can immediately see that right after the oversteer is coming, he countersteers, he goes into the throttle to ask the traction control for help, and it's coming here. You can see it right away. So he's really doing a workaround for his main pattern that I would say is not aligning the amount of turning with the amount of braking, and that's something it's visible in all corners, and that unsettles the car. And then just looking at the purple and red line, maximum braking, going out of the brake, increasing the turning out of the brake, and now ask maximum turning from the car. Whereas for him it's ask maximum turning, ask braking as well, and then, okay, let's stop braking because it doesn't turn in. All of a sudden it turns in a lot. He gets the oversteer, has to correct, and loses a lot of speed on the exit there, having to do 1, 2, 3 corrections with the steering. And that very hesitant throttle application, which, yeah, then just, I mean, just losing speed on the exit there, and that's going to cost him along the whole straight, which you can see here probably. So let's check beginning of the braking zone. So he's lacking some speed there because of my different exit before. But let's look at the time, 2.35 seconds. And then into the corner, yes, he loses some. Let's go to here, 3/10 lost from that oversteer moment. but then 2.65 along the whole straight that I'm faster. I'm gaining 1, 2, another 3/10 just on that long straight because he couldn't get the speed out of that right-hander, and that's sadly something I see and for I know in a lot of coaching I see that people don't sacrifice the corner a bit to have a better straight, because most of the time you spend on the straights, so that's where you're going to gain the time. You got to be fast on the straights first and foremost. Let's look for the last corner and just looking at the time from braking, 2.9 something, searching another half a second there almost. Let's therefore go to the game, speed it up a bit. The corner was fine. This was fine as well. And now we're coming for the braking zone here. Braking point seems fine. I'll probably be a tiny bit later. Drifting towards the outside, perfectly fine. Turning in, clipping that curb. And you can see, like, right now, you could almost feel how much turn in the car had available. So it's, look where the brake is, then he's going out of the brake, and then all of a sudden the car starts turning a lot. And then it turns so much that he nearly hits that inside sausage curb. So it's again matching turning angle and braking. And right now the car just turns a lot. He hits that curb, unsettles the car, opens the steering a bit, goes over that small crest. And now, right now, I think if we went to the cockpit, we would see that he's already turning into the left quite heavily. Whereas he just could have, viewing it from above maybe is the better way to show it. So he's coming over here, then he's basically driving a straight line to here, and then he's turning in. Whereas you really want to swing the car around a bit. I'm overdoing it, right? But you really want the car to either be, you always want to be turning in this section kind of. So you're either turning to the right to get a widest possible entry into this left-hander to get the power down early onto the straight. And for him, it's just a bit, he's so far to the right, but he doesn't make use of it in this case. So really want to just stick to the right, open this one up a little more, and he's just giving something away here pretty much. If we just look at the inputs, he's doing nothing right now, not braking, not accelerating, just waiting for the corner to appear. Then there's the exit, seems a bit tight already, hitting that sausage again. Look where the car is pointing. He's midway in the corner, but he didn't get half the rotation done yet, I would say. So he had this very early apex in this one, and ideally you just have the apex, I don't know, the car should be pointing more into this axis right now than it is pointing into this. So there's like 20 degree of turning that should be done by this point in time. And that can be done by having the wider entry here. I mean, I'm overdoing it, yeah. Wider entry here, getting more rotation done early, then having a later apex, putting the power down, and the traction control won't take all the power away. Let's look at that in terms of data. Zoom into the last corner. Again, as I said, braking point probably going to be a bit early. 76, and this is going to be 90. So 10-15 meters is where I brake later. First thing, carry a lot more speed through the whole braking zone this time, about 20 kilometers even through the whole braking zone. And then you can see the compromises we do inside the corner differ quite severely. So whereas he has his slowest point on turn in, basically, and picks up throttle mid-corner again because he's actually too close to the inside curb already, then builds the speed a little earlier than I do, but then turns in again way earlier here for the left-hander, right? There's that's like 10-12 meters in between where I'm still turning to the right and he's already turning to the left. So we're making very different things in that corner. Braking wise, you can see like this looks very similar, but just shifted. And if his braking line, this whole thing shifted 10 meters to the right, he'd pretty much match my braking input. So in this one, brake later, do the same, I would really say. But again, here's the thing. Already here asking a lot of turning from the car. So whereas I'm at 30-40 degrees of turning angle, Oh, sorry, I should have switched to Motec. There you go. There you go. So what I was going to say is his braking should match mine a little more by just, in this case, really just braking later. That's 10-15 meters there. And then everything else, like the whole pattern, looks very similar. And if we look at the turning angle, you can see that, let's say up until, let's say, we have a similar braking amount there. And his turning is also, if we take that, similar there. But then, like say from, a difficult one, from here, he's just turning way too much, asking a lot of rotation from the front tires, and they just can't take it. And the moment he releases the brakes, all of a sudden the front tires grip up, they rotate the car around, he hits the inside curb, opens the steering here, you can see it, he goes into the throttle to correct the oversteer again. Then the car is rotated, he's kind of surprised by it, picks up the throttle, and already starts turning for the left-hander before he is going out of the throttle. Whereas for me, like the whole compromise in that corner is just a tiny bit later, I build more speed, and I even have to tap the brake again, going into a left-hander. And even though, well, I can't really blame his exit, so he's gaining there. But I think just on entry, throwing the car over that curb, let's go back a tiny bit and see that in the game, is that this curb and this small crest it has will really rotate the car around if you jump over that crest right there. And he already has all the rotation done right now. So he has to pick up the throttle, ease out of the turning, and goes mid-corner, he's going straight basically, and doesn't make use of everything available. So you definitely want more turning here, turn more, come on, turn more, turn a tiny bit longer, and now turn in, just from here, car width more to the right or so. But yeah, his exit, perfectly fine, carrying a lot of speed through there, so you can't blame him for that. To sum this up, overall, looking at the data, he doesn't lose much out of corner one. He loses a lot by lifting through Eau Rouge. Let's focus on this whole lap. Losing a lot by lifting in Eau Rouge. Then it's a different compromise into the Les Comps section, and definitely the whole thing of aligning the braking and turning with one another, making use of the differential and the upshift, timing it with a release of the throttle going into the right hander of Les Comps onto that straight, is a thing that can be used later on in the S's as well. Braking a little deeper into that long 180, 190 degree corner, making or delaying both apexes kind of in a way. So his first apex is a bit early, the second apex is a bit early too. Delay that a bit. Have the slowest speed in the corner more pronounced. Then into No Name, it was again asking a lot from braking and turning at the same time, and as he releases the brake, the car will snap because the front's built the grip all of a sudden. Then there's the oversteer, he loses a lot on that straight ahead. And then I think same pattern with a brake and turning that really has to be matched for the S's as well. Then into the S's here, losing a lot on the straight just because the corners were a bit sacrificed from the oversteer. And then again, same thing, braking too hard, turning too much, asking too much at the same time from the car, which then gets the rear out as he goes out of the brake, and that will just lose a lot of time onto the back straight. And then same thing really in the last chicane. Braking way earlier, doing the same pattern though, which is fine. It's just not aligned with the amount of turning he's doing with the car. And that alone will change the whole corner. Once he finds out about how much turning he can ask of the car with how much braking, and when he releases the brake, how the front will react, then the corner right after will look a lot different, and he can choose different lines and place the car more to his will and won't be as surprised by all the oversteer the car is producing all of a sudden. And I think that concludes pretty much that coaching lesson, 1 hour passed. This is really how much time you need to go through one lap of 2 minutes and 20 in this case. Hope this tells you something. I will get back to you next Sunday with the SRO Esports live stream. So for now, I think this is it. Thanks for joining. Hope there's something in it. Post questions, like, subscribe, blah blah. See you next time.